It was Ray. Oh, okay. And he did. I knew I had told someone. Yeah. Yeah, and Ray did. He appreciated it. You know what? Yeah. About that time. Yeah, he'll tell you. He'll give you a signal.
Good morning.
Good morning.
As a former preschool teacher, I would have flashed the lights. Don't need to do that here. That's a good thing. So let's start this again. Good morning and welcome to those of you who are here in our sanctuary and to those of you who are viewing us online. My name is Sandra Murphy. I'll be the worship associate this morning. The Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Flint is an LGBTQINA+ welcoming and progressive religious community in which all are welcome to be free to be themselves. If you're a visitor and you would like more information about our faith tradition or this congregation, please feel free to talk to one of our ministers today, or contact information for them can be found on our website, uuflint.org. And if you're interested in receiving our weekly update newsletter, you can sign up on our website, or you can fill out one of these cards, which is in the seat back in the pew. And you can also scan the QR code at the order of service. There's announcements also on the order of service, and I'm going to elaborate on a couple of them. There's no place like home is the theme for our month's all member and friend pledge campaign. And as this is the last Sunday in February, I thought I would give you an update on where we are with the canvas. About 55% of current pledgers have returned their form. And we can celebrate the fact that we've got a couple of new pledgers, so thank you. And we've also raised about half of what we pledged last year, so that's also a good sign. This is the last Sunday to be able to participate in a Sunday coffee conversation. So if you haven't done this, you can join me downstairs, Nelson Hall, at the red tablecloth round table during coffee, and we'll have that conversation with 3 questions that we're asking people to answer. To date, there's been about 40 people who've participated in the coffee conversations, and as you might suspect, most of those are the usual suspects, but we have had visitors and other individuals who've been visiting us for the last few months also participate in a conversation, which is also a good thing. I want to remind you that all of this information that we're collecting is going to be put together in a summer report that I will then give to the board and to the ministers. But here are some of the themes that I've seen come forward. People come here to find community. They come here for growth in their spirituality. What they'd like to see more of are activities or events that are outside of Sunday services. In regard to the future, there are fiscal concerns, but nobody seemed to be running around like a chicken with their head cut off yet. And there's interest in more social opportunities. Every thought that's expressed is being noted and collected and will be presented, every single one. So the person who stated that they'd like to see more single women, it's in there. I'm not saying who, but it's in there. For those of you online, we will have a Wednesday evening Zoom conversation this week at 6 p.m. If you're interested in that, you can let me or one of the ministers know if you'd like to participate. And as a reminder, pledge forms are to be returned by March 1st, either to a minister, to myself, to the office, or you can email one of the ministers with your pledge amount. It's very helpful to me if we can get those in before the end of the month. I'm not releasing any monkeys, but I will be making phone calls and emails as reminders. The other announcement that we want to highlight is Tales and Tunes. April 12th, 6 to 9 in Nelson Hall will be our 3rd annual Tales and Tunes. Storytelling, music, and snacks. We're asking people to bring a lawn chair this year along with their own adult beverage. We'll be doing the raffle ticket auction items, and UU Adventures will be available for people to sign up. I want to acknowledge our team. Ray Russ and Chris Monk are collecting stories, so you can see them if you have one to share. Deb Simmons, Kathy Frazee, and I will be gathering the auction item kinds of things, so please feel free to contact one of us. And this year, our music will be provided by our own DJ in the house, Bob Olson. There will be dancing in the streets and great fun. Please plan on attending and bringing a friend with you. And now we will have our chalice lighting. This chalice, symbol of our principles, is lit in reverence for our community and the sharing of our gifts. And now if you'll join me in saying our covenant, recognizing the richness of diversity, the beauty and wonder of shared worship, and the transforming power of love and service, we gather as a sacred, intentional community to freely seek knowledge and truth, and to celebrate the fullness of life, and by our actions to increase goodness and justice.
Good morning. We're going to share a song with you that some of you may know the chorus to. Please sing along. The more voices, the more fun. This is our new gathering song today. Long song. Gather, family, here we belong.
future begins. Our ancestors came from way far away, from a thousand traditions and kin. What would we all share together as we stand here today? The chance to start over again. Here's that chorus again. Gather the family, here we belong, and welcome the stranger come in. Our voices together, all singing one song. It's here that the future begins. Our measure of worth's not in power or gold. The greatest truth comes from the heart. It's how we take care of the weak and the old. This is the place we can start. Together the family, here we belong, and welcome good stranger come in. Our voices together, all singing one song. It's here that the future begins. So light up the forest, our roots hold the past, while our branches reach into the sky. Let our gift to our children be family that lasts, a teacher to which they can fly. Chorus. Gather the family, here we belong, and welcome good stranger come in. Our voices together, all singing one song. It's here that the future begins. It's here that the future begins.
It is not by chance that you arrived here today. You have been looking for something larger than yourself. Inside of you, there is a yearning, a calling, a hope for more, a desire for a place of belonging and caring. Through your struggles, someone nurtured you into being, instilling a belief in a shared purpose, a common yet precious resource that belongs to all of us when we share. And so you began seeking a people who do not put fences around love, a community that holds its arms open to possibilities of love, a heart home to nourish your soul and share your gifts. Welcome home.
Let's all rise. We're going to sing For the Earth, Forever Turning. If you're willing and able to stand up, your voices will carry farther.
Just a reminder, after our spoken meditation and time of silence, during our musical meditation, you'll please feel free to light a candle of joy or concern here at the front, or you can do that at the back if you like. And you can also write a note in one of the booklets back there, and we'll make sure your joy or concern gets into the weekly e-update. Our meditation is entitled At Homeness. We can be silent, we can be still. Be serene in this house of the Spirit. Put aside all noises that annoy, all sounds that irritate. Here you are at home. Leave behind all the frustrations that belittle, that cause us to fret. Here you can be at rest. Put away all the plans to be made, things to be done, victories to be won. Here you can be at peace. Here is a place for us. We are at home in this sanctuary. We are at home on this globe and with all who dwell upon it. Let us enjoy the silence. Amen.
Our reading is from Rebecca Parker. She was the first woman to serve as the permanent head of an accredited U.S. theological school, Star King School for the Ministry, where Jerry and I met. This excerpt is from an essay originally published in the book Soul Work, an anthology published in 2003. She writes, in 1976, I began a cross-country road trip on my way to seminary. I traveled with a friend. We had time, so we decided to take back roads. One afternoon, the road passed through a rural western Pennsylvania area. Late in the day, we came through the hill country and into a valley. It had been raining hard, and as we neared a small town, we noticed blinking yellow lights warning of danger. We saw fields covered in standing water and passed several side roads blocked off with signs that said road closed. Looks like they've had a flood here, I said. Coming into town, we crossed a bridge over a wide river. And the water was high, and it was muddy, and it was flowing very fast, and sandbags were lining the roadway. Gosh, my friend said, looks like it was a major flood. We headed out of town, and then we rounded a bend, and in front of us, a sheet of water covered the roadway, and the water was rising fast like a huge silver balloon being inflated before our eyes. We stopped, and so we started to turn the car around, but the water was rising behind us as well. Suddenly, we realized the flood hadn't happened yesterday or last week. It was happening here and now. Dry ground was disappearing fast, and so we quickly clambered out of the car and we scrambled to higher ground. Soaked to the bone, we huddled under a fir tree. No longer were we lodged in our familiar vehicle. The cold water of the storm poured down on us, baptizing us into the present, a present from which we had been insulated by both our car and our misjudgments about the country that we were traveling through. Not somewhere else, but here, is a phrase from a love poem by Adrienne Rich, which invokes love's imperative. The lover is drawn into what is present, to what is real, to what is here, what is now. In its beauty and its tragedy, its burden of grief, and in its full measure of joy. Life is loved through presence, not absence, through connection, not alienation. The moment we left our car and felt the rain falling on our bodies, soaking our skin, and had to scramble to safety was a blessed moment. Not because there's virtue in danger, but because we became present to our environment. We ceased being passive observers or commentators. Our whole beings, bodies, minds, and senses became involved with the requirements of the situation. We left our compartment and inhabited the world. No longer tourists passing through the country, we became part of the place along with everyone else that day in that corner of Pennsylvania, in that storm. I speak of this experience as a baptism because it was a conversion from distance to presence, from misconception to realization. It was an awakening to life, an advance into participation, and a birth into the world.
The song I'm singing is called Sanctuary, and it talks about being a sanctuary for someone, and I hope you find that in this place, in this time.
Will you be my refuge, my haven in the storm? Will you keep the embers warm when my fire's all but gone? Will you remember and bring me sprigs of rosemary? Be my sanctuary till I can carry on, carry on, carry on. This one knocked me to the ground. This one dropped me to my knees. I should have seen it coming, but it surprised me. Will you be my refuge, my haven in the storm? Will you keep the embers warm when my fire's all but gone? Will you remember and bring me sprigs of rosemary? Be my sanctuary till I can carry on, carry on, carry on. In a state of true believers, on streets called us and them, it's gonna take some time till the world feels safe again. Will you be my refuge, my haven in the storm? Will you keep the embers warm till I can carry on, carry on, carry on? You can rest here in the chapel or in a circle of friends, a quiet grove of trees or between two bookends. Will you be my refuge, my haven in the storm? Will you keep the embers warm till my fire's all but gone? Will you remember and bring me sprigs of rosemary? Be my sanctuary till I can carry on, carry on, carry on, carry on.
In the early days of the internet, there was something called the Unitarian Universalist Online Forum. Canadian UU, Stephen Jonason, found himself checking it often. Now, Stephen was a former board member of the Church of the Larger Fellowship. That's the UU Church Without Walls for the people who did not have a brick and mortar UU church close to them. So he felt a responsibility to answer questions that people who were new to UUism would pose on that forum. So he remembers that he was especially embarrassed by several responses he saw to one particular message asking what UUism was all about. Jonason decided to send a private email to this person to say that she might have been a bit misinformed by some of the answers that she had received, and he offered to send her literature about Unitarian Universalism. After getting no response for about 3 weeks, he simply assumed that she had lost interest. But then he got an email, and it said, no, she would like information. So Jonason's correspondent provided a post office box in a small town in Georgia. Nothing strange about that, except the last line of her email said, please send the pamphlets in a plain, unmarked envelope. Who knew that UU brochures could be considered contraband? The two continued to communicate via email, and the mystery unraveled. She was a high school senior and a Southern Baptist in rural Georgia who was having doubts about her faith. It caused her such distress that she confessed she had even contemplated suicide. Then, by pure coincidence, her history teacher had given her an assignment to write about the shortcomings of the United Nations. As she paged through the Encyclopedia Britannica, remember that's how we used to do research, she came upon the entry for Unitarian, because of course that comes shortly before United Nations. It was her first glimmer of hope. So then she confided in a cousin she talked to by telephone who lived in a larger city and owned a computer. The cousin investigated UUism further and helped connect her with the UU Forum and then eventually with Jonason. The two emailed from time to time over several years. But it was the very last message that Jonason received from the girl that stuck with him to this day. She thanked him, and she told him that Unitarian Universalism had saved her life, both figuratively and literally. I can completely understand that. Like other people who have suffered emotional or physical abuse just under 40 years ago, as another converted UU said, I had dreams of somewhere else but here. I also had trouble even imagining a future for myself until discovering a UU church. After years of never feeling like I belonged anywhere, optimistic adult role models welcomed me into the large choir of the First Universalist Church of Minneapolis. They gave me friendship and love and opportunities to trust again. And it changed everything. And eventually it led to the ministry, and you could say here. Now, unless you were born into this faith tradition, everyone has a unique story about how you first discovered a UU congregation and what a difference it made in your life. And although all of those origin stories are individual, the common denominator I have noticed is that we just couldn't be ourselves somewhere else. We were too liberal somewhere else, too queer somewhere else, too agnostic, too working class, too young, too old somewhere else. I wonder if some of you were too much of something somewhere else. Do you remember? Would anyone like to share what you were too much of somewhere else? Go ahead.
Feminist.
Too feminist.
Too queer.
Too queer.
Too
Shy. Okay.
Too optimistic.
Too optimistic. All right, right.
I
Okay.
do that here too.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. Thank you. So, in a nutshell, many of us were just too different somewhere else until we found Unitarian Universalism, the place that we call a spiritual home. But listen, that's no minor thing. So please don't take your presence here too lightly, because UUism saves lives. It saved a young girl in rural Georgia, and I believe it saved mine. And I am positive that there are hundreds of other people out there that feel the same way. As Rebecca Parker wrote from the reading this morning, life is lived through presence, not absence, through connection, not alienation, not somewhere else, but here. Being here, welcoming someone home, can make all the difference for someone. And by definition, home is not just a building, but an environment where you find security and happiness. It's why we chose There's No Place Like Home for the theme of our pledge campaign this year. 94 years ago, about 20 Unitarian Universalists got together, and then for 94 years worked to make this congregation a home for those in search of community and love and justice and reason. Think of that. For all of those years, hundreds of children and adults found a home where they could speak from the heart about what mattered to them without judgment, without fear. Now, of course, occasionally we do that in some unorthodox ways. I heard a story about a teenage boy who was going to assist in a religious education class for children. Now, his mother asked him what the lesson was for the upcoming Sunday. And so he told her, well, the plan is that the kids were supposed to learn, according to the lesson plan, that every person is valuable for their uniqueness. And even though we're all different, when we come together as a community, we can accomplish anything. Then the teenager paused and he said, but if it doesn't work, I guess we'll make clay bunnies. So it's true. Sometimes kids are going to make clay bunnies, even in our UU churches. But for the most part, we arrive here because all the other places that we turn to, all those somewhere else's, didn't feel quite right. And you know, sometimes all it takes is a smile from someone else to know that this is home. So I love this story. It's about a rabbi, and she talks about a member from her temple. So she knows that this particular member is an atheist, but he comes to temple every week without fail. So the rabbi was very intrigued by his faithful attendance, and she decided she was just going to ask him about it. And so the man replied, "You know my friend Bernie?" Yeah, she did. Well, he says, "Bernie comes to temple every week to talk to God. I come every week to talk to Bernie." Well, I'm guessing some of you are Bernie. That man came to temple to see Bernie, and he was sensing that that was at-homeness. He was feeling at home. That was the term that UU Minister Richard Gilbert described in the meditation this morning. Gilbert said, "Here we are at home. We are at home in this sanctuary. Here you can be at peace." At-homeness is what we strive for in our congregation now and in the future. I hope it's the feeling you get when you walk through the doors. It's a feeling of kindness, a warmth of welcome, support of caring, and a collective power of companionship. And those feelings are manifested in a myriad of ways, and it's not just what we do here on Sundays in this room. I mean, it could be a Sunday, it could be a song, a sermon, a hug, a potluck, but it might also be a hospital visit, a meal that was delivered to you, a hand that you held when you were grieving, or a card in the mail. Because we're a family that shares in both the celebrations and the sorrows in every aspect of our lives. And here's the thing, we don't always know if and how we've made an impact on someone else's life. So all those years ago, that Canadian UU, Stephen Jonason, he was fortunate because that young woman from Georgia, she told him what his kindness had meant to her. We don't always get that. Now, he has told that story many, many times. I've even heard it in person. To UUs all across Canada and the United States to emphasize how important we, Unitarian Universalists, are to the world. In fact, he says that nearly every time people hear it, someone will approach him afterwards at an event and say something like, "That sounds just like me." So Jonason says that at one large UU event about a decade or so after he mailed that unmarked package, he retold the story again, as he usually did, and a number of people were lining up to talk to him afterwards. But there was a woman with a small child who was kind of off to the side, and she waited until everybody else was gone, finished talking to him, and she approached him, and she had tears in her eyes. And she said, "I'm your correspondent from Georgia." She was the actual high school senior. And in that moment, he said he was truly convinced that our ministry of kindness and hope really does offer salvation to people in need of it. So I cannot help to think that there aren't more people like her still out there. And they're waiting. So we have changed lives and saved lives, and we can still make a difference. So now, right now, there are people looking for spiritual homes. Maybe they're just looking for their Bernie. Could you be Bernie? So let's grab every chance we have. Now, you might go about it completely differently than someone else, but I want to tell you about a recent experience I had with someone who wanted to be my Bernie. So, a few weeks ago, I was in Meyer, and I noticed an older woman. She was kind of pacing up and down the aisle, and she was mumbling a bit, and she looked really frustrated. And I was not in a terribly big hurry, and you know me, I like to talk. So I asked her if she needed any help. And she explained that her doctor had instructed her to get this over-the-counter medicine. It was written on this slip of paper that she handed me, and she was nearly blind, she said, and she was having trouble reading both what the doctor wrote, and she couldn't read what was on the bottles on the shelves. So I started looking. I couldn't find it, so I asked somebody in the pharmacy, and eventually we found what she needed, and she thanked me profusely, gave me a little hug, and then you probably guessed what she did next. She invited me to come to her church on Sunday. I don't think I looked terribly lost, but she told me she had a wonderful female minister who gave fantastic sermons, beautiful music, and then she offered me lunch afterwards. And of course, I graciously thanked her, but I explained that I was a minister and I had my own church, but I told her, "You were so very nice to offer me that." And then, of course, we parted, and there was another hug and some smiles and some waves. How many of us would have been as uninhibited and enthusiastic about church as she was? Okay, thank you, Ray. It was a rhetorical question, but okay. Now, I know that some of you, probably many of you, have invited people here, and some of you are here because you were invited. But it bears repeating, a friendly smile, a comfortable chair, a cup of coffee, an offer of lunch, or a heartfelt email could save a life. Plus, you know, where else does your minister dress up like Dorothy from Wizard of Oz, or a pianist play disco, or, I mean, not somewhere else, but here. And I know that we all know that there's no place like your UU Congregation of Flint home. This is where we do the things we care most about, with the people we care about the most, and it's the place we call our spiritual home. And as Sandra said, today is the official end of our pledge campaign, and there's going to be conversations continuing about our long-term plans. But I don't want you to stop sharing your ideas about what you dream we can do next. There's going to be more opportunities to talk and think about how we sustain this congregation for everyone that's here today and all those people that don't even know about us yet. Because you never know. Perhaps the next salvation story will happen right here. Now, not every story about coming home to UUism is going to be as dramatic as what I've told you. But I think there's probably a lot of moving testaments in this room to the power of finding a place where our deepest fears and greatest hopes were held in love. They're your stories. Now, you don't have to be like that woman in Meyer that invited me to church. I'm not saying that. But perhaps you can find a way to share your own story and tell somebody what it means to feel at homeness here. And I do hope that you are as passionate about ensuring that UUism endures for centuries to come as I am. And if you don't want to share your own story, perhaps one of the coming home stories that you hear today inspire you. And if you haven't heard one yet, here's one more. So Manish was a 20-year-old gay college student attending Georgetown University. It was in the 1990s. And he had grown up in, quote, a traditional Hindu immigrant family with unambiguous expectations of heterosexual marriage, unquote. He says he had pretended he wasn't gay, tried not to be gay, and prayed not to be gay, and that didn't work. So he went to a bridge over the Potomac River to jump. But then he realized he didn't have a pen or paper to write a note that he said he must leave to guilt trip the world. So he went back to his dorm to pen that note when he encountered a classmate. The classmate advised him that if he was going to kill himself anyway, he might as well try being gay for a while, because after all, the bridge wasn't going anywhere. So Manish decided to come out. But he found that there weren't any Hindu communities that affirmed gay people. So thus began a spiritual quest lasting several years, until a conversation with a close friend who lived in Finland, of all places. Manish expressed to his friend his frustration, and the friend said, "Well, have you ever heard of the Unitarians?" The friend had met a couple of them. There was a very small group, about 20 of them, in Helsinki. And the friend said, "I thought they were pretty nice." Of course, both friends doubted that there was any such group where Manish lived, in Washington, D.C. But while still on this ever-increasingly expensive phone call, Manish fired up his very big, bulky, slow computer and managed to find the UUA website, plugged in his location, and found that, yes, there indeed was a congregation nearby, and it just happened to be one of our largest, All Souls. So soon, Manish had to convince his atheist science professor partner to go there with him, and it took a lot of convincing. But after very long discussions, they finally made their way to a Sunday service. They chose to sit in the very front. I don't know what they were thinking. But anyway, they noticed that there were a large number of older folks sitting around them. Manish said his immediate default assumptions about older Americans kicked in, and they both worried about what those people were thinking about them. Then it became worse when at the start of the service, a microphone was passed around and they had to introduce themselves as a couple. So they fretted the entire service of the unwelcome they were sure to receive once the service ended. So when it was over, they decided they were going to dash out the door just as soon as they could. But a very elderly woman shoved her walker in the aisle in front of them and blocked their way. They became alarmed. Then she reached over her walker and hugged Manish. And she whispered in his ear, "I'm so glad you're here. Welcome." So, still a member at that church, many, many years later, Manish says the memory of that experience nearly brings him to tears. Every fear that he had evaporated in that unbridled moment of a welcoming home from a long absence. And Manish said he had opportunities later to be a lay preacher in the church where he talked about being Hindu and UU and being gay and spiritual. But one day, one of the elders requested that he speak on something very specific. Remind us why we're worth finding, she said. So I pose that question to you. Why is UUCF, your spiritual home, worth finding? Search your heart for the answer, and please consider sharing it with the world.
Let's all stand. I hope you are thoroughly challenged. I am. We're going to be singing the first two verses of Come Sing a Song With Me. It's on page 346 if you don't know it, if you need to look at the numbers or the music note.
Come
To whom much is given, even more is asked. We have been given the bounty of this beautiful day. We have been given minds with which to wonder and to reason, and we have been given voices to speak, to sing, and to shout against injustice. And we have hands to work and to build the better world we have for ourselves and our children. We are asked to use them all in the service of love and justice. We ponder this mystery together, glad for one another, blessed by the abundance of our lives and called to give abundantly of ourselves to it. So we invite you to celebrate your abundance by placing your offering in the basket at the back of the church as you leave, or by making an online gift at uuflint.org. If you feel so inclined, there are pledge forms also on that back table. Thank you for all of the many gifts that you continuously give to support this congregation.
Let us remember always to give thanks for the blessing of community and the circumstances that have brought us together. Let us give thanks for our own gifts, knowledge that comfort, words that encourage, and knowing each other in so many ways. Let us hold each other safe in our hearts with great love and tenderness. And let us all have hope for the future.
And let us extinguish the chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are gathered together again.
Yeah, there is. It was invisible. Thank you. Jerry has an announcement.
Oh, just remember this Thursday, and you can read about this in the e-update, but there's an opportunity to come here. I believe it's, Sue may have to help me out here, 6.
No.